Don't forget to check out our grades for all of the prospects in this year's draft class by visiting the link at the bottom of the screen. I've been a fan of how the Cincinnati Bengals have drafted over the last 5 years. I believe they do a great job in acquiring talent despite not having the resources that many other teams have as far as scouting is concerned. This was a pretty even draft for them, 6 defensive picks and 5 on the offensive side of the ball. One of the offensive guys was a quarterback in round 7 out of Toledo and Logan Woodside. Now, Woodside I thought was better as a sophomore and as a junior, more so than his senior season, but he's at least, in my opinion, an upgrade over Matt Barkley. And defensively, both Andrew Brown out of Virginia and Darius Phillips out of Western Michigan were solid players throughout their college careers. And Brown had a really good week of work down at the Senior Bowl, while Phillips has good ball skills and special teams value. What I liked about the Bengals draft was initially hitting a home run at a position of need with Billy Price out of Ohio State. He's a premier player at a premier position that'll help strengthen the offense because of his ability in pass pro and also in run blocking. This was lacking for a long time in Cincinnati, and they solved that problem pretty quickly with this selection. I was also a big fan of the Mark Walton pick. I actually graded out Walton 1 point higher than last year's draft pick, Joe Mixon. So the Bengals now have one heck of a backfield with Mixon, Bernard, and also Mark Walton. Walton's game is very similar to Kareem Hunt in the sense that he's a complete player on both ends that has the fluidity to be able to consistently find lanes to run through, along with the burst to rip off yards and chunks. The Bengals also grabbed some very productive defensive players as well in Malik Jefferson out of Texas, Jesse Bates out of Wake Forest, and Devontae Harris out of Illinois State. Jefferson was a 3-year starter at Texas and is your classic run and chase linebacker. I think he's an instant starter on the outside. Bates has a chance to be a very good free safety in this defense, which could put George Iloka in more of a matchup position as an overhang defender. Bates was one of the best pure free safeties in this draft class because of his instincts and angles that he takes to the football. And Devontae Harris has superb athleticism and ball skills. He was a star in one of the tougher FCS conferences in the country and more than held his own in one-on-ones down at the East-West Shrine game this past January. I also like the Auden Tate selection. Tate gives them a bigger receiver to utilize in red zone situations and over the middle of the field. He still has some upside left in his game, which is great value considering where he was selected. Now, what I questioned was the Sam Hubbard pick out of Ohio State. In my opinion, he was a solid player, but not a difference maker, so to speak, coming off the edge. He's more Marcus Hunt as opposed to Jordan Willis. I just felt as though there were more explosive options out there in round 3 that they could have chosen. Quentin Flowers is one of the best quarterbacks in the country and in this draft class, so that's why it's a shame that he has to compete with the likes of Mark Walton, Joe Mixon, Gio Bernard, and Brian Hill to make this team as a running back. I can't imagine watching the American Athletic Conference Championship game against UCF and coming away from that thinking that this guy should be anything other than a quarterback. I know they'll say, oh, wow, he's great with the ball in his hands, or we can use him in a zone read, wildcat type plays where the defense doesn't know whether or not he's going to keep the ball or run it. To me, that just sounds like he should be at quarterback running RPOs and normal play fakes. When you look at how much progress he made as a passer and how much success USF had as a program with him at quarterback, why would you want to have him play another position that he hadn't played before at the highest of levels? His running skills are more of a threat at quarterback than as a pure traditional tailback, and you can't use height as an issue because we just saw the #1 overall pick be a guy that's just about 6 feet tall. Remember, size is not a skill. He's the second best quarterback on this roster, and the sooner the Bengals realize that, the better. The Bengals got a really good, strong safety in Trayvon Henderson out of Hawaii. I like his ability as an overhang defender and a matchup guy. He's excellent in shrinking space going downhill and has top-notch ball skills as well. Devontae Boyd has some of the best pure route running skills in the draft class. He's the type of guy that'll eat up zone coverage because of how he's able to read and adjust on the fly. I also feel as though he'll be a good special teamer. Javon Roland Jones is a steal of an acquisition because of what he can do to affect the pocket. He's a Sun Belt Conference all-time leader in forced fumbles and TFLs and is tied with Terrell Suggs for the all-time FBS sack leader. He can play with his hand off or on the ground and got better this season at the point of attack versus the run than earlier in his career. Brad Lundblade was solid all week long at the East-West Shrine game, showcasing much improved technique, which is the direct result of working with Duke Manyweather, who's one of the better O-line coaches in the country. He also has good athleticism to get out and around on run plays. Junior Joseph is coming off a highly decorated career with the Yukon Huskies. He can play all three backer spots and has gotten better each and every season. I was on the broadcast of the Tropical Bowl this past January, which is the postseason All-Star game in Daytona Beach, and Joseph was one of the standouts all week long and also in the game. Chris Worley graded right behind Joseph, so the Bengals are getting two really good backers that can play in space and are excellent versus a run. Worley was also showing very good ability versus the pass down at the Shrine game this January. I gave the Bengals a B for their draft. Once again, this team did a great job bringing in good quality football players that can help this football team moving forward. And I feel like the offensive line improvements and the efforts to get better on the back seven will help this team be much better overall in 2018.